Right now, somewhere beneath the Himalayan mountains, there may be a civilization that has quietly existed for thousands of years. A kingdom with golden palaces, inhabitants who don't age the way we do, and technology that makes our most advanced machinery look primitive. A place deliberately hidden from the rest of humanity, not because it can't be found, but because it chooses not to be found. And according to ancient prophecy, it won't stay hidden much longer. This is Shambhala, and this might be the most important story you've never been told, the Hindu origin. Most people assume Shambhala is a Tibetan legend, something monks invented in some remote mountain monastery. But that's not where it started. It started in one of the oldest religious texts on earth, the Vishnu Purana. And what it says about Shambhala is far more alarming than any folktale. In chapter 24, book 4 of the Vishnu Purana, there is a very specific prophecy. Not vague, not symbolic, specific. It describes a future time when the world sinks into what the ancient writers called the Kali Yuga, a dark age where evil spreads unchecked, righteousness disappears entirely, and humanity loses all connection to anything beyond material desire. When this dark age hits its lowest point, a divine being will be born. His birthplace, a place called Shambhala. His name is Kalki, the 10th and final avatar of the god Vishnu. And the text doesn't describe him as a peaceful teacher or gentle prophet. It describes a warrior. He rides a white horse and wields a blazing sword, and his purpose is to systematically dismantle every force of darkness that has taken over the world. What comes after that destruction is a new golden age, the Satya Yuga, an era where the survivors are said to have minds as clear as crystal. The Bhagavata Purana gets even more specific. It names the exact family Kalki will be born into and give a birth date tied to Krishna's birth cycle. These aren't poetic flourishes. The texts present them as coordinates in time. So the very first reference to Shambhala in recorded history connects it directly to the end of the world as we know it. A prophecy about apocalypse and rebirth that is the foundation. This whole story is built on. Jump forward to 1027 AD. Tibetan Buddhist scholars are writing a manuscript called the Kalachakra Tantra, and it takes those early Hindu references and expands them into something vastly more complex. The Kalachakra Tantra is not a simple spiritual guide. It covers time, the cosmos, and human consciousness at a level of detail researchers still struggle to fully unpack. And it transforms Shambhala from a village in a prophecy into a fully realized hidden kingdom with precise geography, specific rulers, and conditions for who can access it. According to the Kalachakra, Shambhala exists on multiple levels simultaneously. The outer level is physical, an actual place, an actual kingdom with real terrain. But the texts are insistent. Only individuals whose spiritual development has reached a certain threshold can even perceive that the entrance exists. You could walk right past it and see nothing. Not because you lack equipment, but because your mind isn't tuned to register what's there. The inner meaning is about your own consciousness, something only unlocked through deep, advanced meditation. Those practices were so sacred they were never written down, passed exclusively from teacher to student, in person, orally. No manuals, no shortcuts. Over the centuries, Shambhala accumulated different names. Tibetans called it Almo Lung Ring. In Western culture, it became Shangri-La. Hindu traditions called it Aryavartha. Others knew it as the Forbidden Land, the Land of White Waters, the Land of Radiant Spirits. The people of Shambhala themselves reportedly called it the Land of 1,000 Names. But across all those names and centuries and cultures, the description stayed consistent. The Kalachakra Tantra gets surprisingly specific about the kingdom's physical layout. Shambhala is shaped like a lotus flower with 8 petals, and that's not a metaphor. The manuscript describes literal geography, 8 distinct territories arranged around a central capital city called Kalapa, enclosed by 8 snow-capped mountain ranges forming natural walls around the entire kingdom. Between those peaks, the Shambhala River flows through valleys that sustain the civilization. At the center stands Kalapa. The text describes palaces built from gold, silver, emeralds, sapphires, rubies, and pearls, not decorated with those materials, actually constructed from them. The inhabitants, called the Nakal, are described as having achieved a level of physical and mental refinement far beyond ordinary humans. Aging works differently in Shambhala. The kingdom is said to exist in a state of purity that keeps disease and deterioration largely at bay. Some traditions claim the Nakal live for thousands of years. What sustains them is described as spiritual technology. The texts outline a bill. Idis that sound more like advanced science than mysticism, the manipulation of energy through consciousness, machines operating without conventional fuel, telepathic communication, contact with beings from other worlds, and passages that reference time manipulation. In 1500 AD, artists were commissioned to paint Shambhala based strictly on the Kalachakra scriptures, with one absolute rule: no artistic imagination. Every detail had to come from the text. Observers monitored the painters throughout. When the paintings were finished, everyone present was stunned. Every single one depicted a civilization that looked simultaneously ancient and impossibly advanced, a society that had clearly mastered both profound spiritual wisdom and sophisticated technology operating on principles we still don't understand. The Kalachakra Tantra places Shambhala north of India, hidden within the Himalayan mountain range. In the 17th century, a Tibetan scholar named Desai Sanji Gyatso narrowed it further, placing it between 36 and 48 degrees north latitude on a modern map. That band covers Mongolia, western China, and the Altai mountain region. Multiple independent sources across different centuries, with no connection to each other, kept pointing toward the same zone. The high-altitude Altai mountains, remote valleys between Tibet and Mongolia. The area around Mount Kailash, one of the most sacred peaks in both Hindu and Buddhist tradition. Mount Kailash has never been climbed, not because it's physically impossible, but because every surrounding culture, Hindu, Buddhist, Bon, and Jain, treats the peak as so sacred that to attempt the summit would be profound desecration. Multiple ancient texts specifically link Shambhala to Kailash, placing the kingdom either directly beneath it or in its shadow. When Western explorers later tried matching the 1500 AD paintings to real terrain, their geographic references kept pointing toward one region, the Altai, a place still associated today with ruins and structures that don't fit the established timeline of human civilization. Even if you somehow had the correct coordinates, the texts make one thing clear: you still couldn't access Shambhala from the surface. According to Tibetan monks, the kingdom is entered through tunnels, an Alabo, great underground network connecting Shambhala to hidden sanctuaries around the world. Passages described as large enough to move entire populations through a global web, with entry points in Mongolia, the Gobi Desert, and deep in the Himalayas. At this point, you might be ready to dismiss that completely. But then there's the Gyuj Kingdom. In 1673, the king of Ladakh attacked the Gyuj Kingdom, an ancient Tibetan civilization. His soldiers arrived expecting a battle and found an abandoned palace. Inside the palace, extensive underground tunnels stretching 2 kilometers below the surface, with signs of very recent activity. Some passages had been deliberately collapsed from the inside, as though someone was sealing off the route behind them. The remaining passageways led toward one place, Mount Kailash. Where did 100,000 people go? No one has ever answered that. And this connects to another legend called Agartha, a separate hidden kingdom said to exist deep in the Earth's interior, linked to Shambhala through the same network. Some traditions describe it all as a global web of hidden civilizations, each preserving ancient knowledge, all connected beneath the surface of the world we think we fully understand. The mystery has driven people to search, sometimes at extraordinary cost. Nicholas Roerich, a Russian painter, mystic, and archaeologist, led a major expedition through Central Asia in the 1920s. Publicly, it was cultural research. His personal letters, released later, revealed otherwise. The expedition was secretly funded by Soviet, British, and American interests simultaneously. His maps aligned closely with ancient Tibetan scrolls describing Shambhala's location. On August 5, 1927, he wrote in his diary about witnessing an oval-shaped object in the sky moving with intelligent purpose, connected, he believed, to Shambhala's advanced technology. He never found the entrance, but his books describe unexplained weather events, valleys that seemed to shift location, and a persistent feeling that the landscape itself was being managed by something unseen. Helena Blavatsky, founder of the Theosophical Society, took a different approach. In her 1888 work, The Secret Doctrine, she described Shambhala as a real civilization guided by highly evolved beings she called Mahatmas, masters working quietly behind the scenes to steer humanity away from collapse. She insisted they were real and actively involved in shaping human affairs from a place most people. Then came the darkest chapter in this history. In 1938, under direct orders from Heinrich Himmler, a team of Nazi scientists and occultists arrived in Tibet. The Ahnenerbe, Hitler's dedicated occult research division, believed Shambhala contained actual ancient Aryan null edge and real energy sources that could be weaponized. Led by Ernst Schaefer, the team studied Tibetan manuscripts, collected biological measurements of low-calorie searching for pure bloodlines, and hunted for specific artifacts. What they found has never been fully disclosed. Documents seized after the war referenced the hidden valley of the Dharma King and maps marking locations as zones of spiritual significance. Certain files from this expedition remain classified. The Nazis weren't the first government to take this seriously. British intelligence files from 1910 to 1930 contained entries specifically marked Shambhala. Investigation. Explorers like Sir Francis Younghusband and Captain Frieder Ick Bailey were dispatched into the Himalayas with clear government backing. Governments that publicly dismissed such legends were privately funding the search that in recent decades. Seismic survey technology, equipment that maps under ground geology like sonar maps the ocean floor, started producing unexpected results in the Himalayan region. Beneath areas considered sacred for thousands of years, surveyors found vast underground chambers, not small cave systems. Massive hollow spaces, some large enough to contain entire cities at different depths, some a few hundred meters down, others extending thousands of meters below the surface. Geological surveys have struggled to explain them through conventional processes. Here's what makes it stranger. When researchers overlaid satellite images of the remote Himalayan surface, images showing unusual geometric formations, in isolated locations, those surface formations aligned almost perfectly with the underground chambers below. The geometry above matched the geometry below. If these chambers formed naturally, why do they reflect the 8-petal structure described in the Kalachakra Tantra thousands of years ago? If they're not natural, who built them and when? So why stay hidden? What are they waiting for? 5. The Kalachakra Tantra answers this without ambiguity. They're waiting for the end. The texts describe a gradual collapse of human civilization as materialism takes everything else. When people driven entirely by material desire unite, under a single corrupt leadership and believe they've conquered the world. That is the trigger. That is when Shambhala reveals itself, not peacefully. The 25th king of Shambhala, named Rudra Chakran, will emerge at the head of a massive army and wage war not for territory or resources, but to restore cosmic order to a world that has completely lost its way. The Kalachakra places this event approximately 5,000 years after the Buddha's death. Most Tibetan texts state that passing to around 500 BC, which puts the emergence somewhere around 2424 or 2425 AD. About 400 years from now, the Hindu texts run in parallel. The Vishnu, Purana, and the Bhagavata Purana describe Kalki being born in Shambhala during the final phase of the Kali Yuga, emerging on that white horse with that blazing sword, destroying the forces of darkness and ushering in a new golden age. Different traditions, son. Stories apart, same conclusion. When human civilization deteriorates completely, Shambhala stops hiding. Now look at the world right now. Nuclear weapons capable of ending civilization multiple times over. Artificial intelligence evolving faster than anyone controls. Mass extinction events accelerating. Climate systems shifting in ways that are increasingly hard to reverse. By several measures, humanity is currently checked. ING boxes on the list of conditions the ancient prophecies describe as the trigger. What sets the Shambhala prophecy apart from typical end times narratives is this: it doesn't describe helpless people waiting to be rescued. It describes a civilization that has been quietly training and preparing for thousands of years. When Shambhala's warriors emerge, the texts say they won't fight with conventional weapons. They'll fight with spiritual technology. And according to the prophecy, they win. The transition will not be painless. Those who have given themselves entirely to materialism, who have shut themselves off from any higher truth, will not survive what's coming. Not as punishment, but because what's coming is something they never prepared for. The easiest thing to do right now is dismiss all of this. Ancient texts, unverified, tunnels, classified government files, seismic data with possible conventional explanations. An explorer in 1927 who saw something unexplained and drew his own conclusions. Call it myth. Move on, but here's what keeps serious researchers coming back. Why does it all point the same direction? Hindu texts, Tibetan manuscripts, archaeological discoveries, seismic surveys, and credible eyewitness accounts from people across centuries who had zero connection to one another, all converge on the same conclusion. Shambhala doesn't appear once and fade. It persists. It resurfaces. It keeps getting corroborated.